Hello everybody, this is Havoc with a Total War blog development update. We don't get these too often anymore, so I don't mind making an exception to my usual Monday-Thursday rule to bring this information to you. There's some very enticing content for all areas of Total War for the next 12 months, and it's honestly making me pretty damn excited for the future of Total War as a whole. So as always, let's dive in. The first chunk of the blog was dedicated to Total War 3 Kingdoms, with excitement revolving around the fact that not only was it the fastest selling and most successful title to date, but that it also sold extremely well in the Western world, which tells me that this was a pretty big gamble for Creative Assembly, and that they were indeed focusing on the Eastern cultures, devouring this with the hopes that Westerners would hop on the hype train as a secondary objective. Not that most of us Westerners wouldn't like it, well, you've seen some of the Western culture backlash and toxicity throughout the development of the game. Regardless, Creative Assembly is very well pleased with things so far. They've also admitted that having a DLC that takes place immediately after the main game, while an intriguing time period, was ultimately not the best of ideas as the first DLC, when there's a lot more content to develop for the main game as a whole. I'll always give kudos to any game development team that owns up to shortcomings, so GG, well played Creative Assembly. But here's where it gets really good. Creative Assembly will still focus on these chapter packs such as 8 Princes, and I believe they totally should. But they're also working on a free update coming in October for the main game. We've seen some extremely good changes coming from these updates, and this October update is looking to bring some character-specific artwork along with some campaign fixes and balances. It doesn't stop there though. The next DLC will, quote, add significantly to the main campaign, and RCA is continuing to look at how that might develop and grow into some much bigger DLCs over time. Looking back to the issues of the 8 Princes DLC, it seems like Creative Assembly knows they need to really flesh out the main game before tackling other periods. While I don't necessarily agree with using DLCs to do that, if they follow the Warhammer 2 model of adding free LC that brings a lot of content to the game whether you get the DLC or not, then I'm slightly more agreeable with that strategy. DLC or not, CA gave us some ideas on future content in the blog. The Nanmen, or Southern Chinese Barbarians, will make an appearance in about a year, hopefully bringing some serious Rome 1 vibes with using animals in warfare and bringing elephants into the foray. They'll be looking into the Yellow Turban Rebellion and the Liang Province Rebellion, which took place at almost the same time to help bring down the Han Dynasty. And it looks like we could even get a more micro-region focused DLC on Cao Cao and Lu Bu in the Central Plains of China. That is just the beginning. The blog goes on to say that while not set in stone, there will be years of Total War 3 Kingdoms content. My hope is that what we will eventually get is centuries of Eastern culture eras to equal their Western culture counterparts, as there are some seriously good Total War type conflicts in Asia's history. On to Warhammer. The last DLC, The Hunter and the Beast, really revived my desire to get back into Warhammer more consistently. And with the update to the Empire, we are seeing what Creative Assembly is trying to do to bring the first Warhammer game up to par with its vastly superb Warhammer 2 counterparts. From the blog, it looks like they are trying to push the limits of what their partnership with Games Workshop can generate in terms of official content. There is so much unofficial and fan-based content that of course we as the community would love to see, it just may not be doable within the contract they have with Games Workshop. But with the third part of Warhammer apparently deep into production with full steam ahead, we aren't done with Warhammer 1 or Warhammer 2 content. It looks like we aren't too far from the next Warhammer 2 DLC and free LC arriving during Festag this winter. Creative Assembly has also decided to forego updating another Old World race in favor of updating the game with fixes and improvements. And while that is a bit disappointing, it does appear that the Greenskins are the next confirmed updated Old World race, coming sometime next year. Personally, I'm almost always up for fixes over adding new content. I like my games to run smoothly rather than injecting it with more things that could cause it to possibly run worse. Let's hope what they've got in store will be just as good as what they've been cranking out. To finish the Warhammer section of the video, CA opens up a bit about wanting to be more open about their release schedule and the risks therein. There is a seeming desire in the company to provide the community with expectations for what content comes out when. We know they have internal release dates, and it's good that they want to be more transparent, but as they mention in the blog, it comes with some serious risks, namely in delays. The best way to get your vocal side of the community in pitchforks is to announce a delay, especially when you're already a release date target. Looking at 3 Kingdoms delaying their game multiple times and the outcry from that. So while I am all for transparency, sometimes it's to the benefit of not just the company, but also its fan base to keep that bit behind the curtain a bit. Hopefully they'll be able to find a good middle ground between internal and community expectations to satiate all sides. The last bit of this blog briefly addresses the latest Total War Saga and their expectations within. This is yet another form of transparency for Creative Assembly that I'm glad to see, addressing the fact that while Thrones of Britannia really did split the community on the idea of Saga titles, they were still pretty pleased with how the game turned out. After all, this was a very experimental and risky title for them, and I think they learned a lot about it. Taking a look at Steam charts, Thrones of Britannia has actually been picking up some traffic of late, and is actually on par in terms of current players with a grand strategy game that came out in April. And that honestly says quite a bit for a game that's 1.5 years old and wasn't received all too well throughout its entire life. Back to the upcoming saga, they won't give out anything aside from the idea that they'll focus on more bravery and legend making with this one, which honestly still just confirms more on the rumor that the next title will focus on the epic around Troy. I'm on the smaller side of the community that thought Thrones was actually a pretty decent game, especially with the latest update. Since it's meant to be experimental and more focused, there will always be things that the larger part of the community probably just doesn't agree with. The hope is that CA saw what worked and what didn't, and will use that to make this new Saga title really shine and make it worthy of the title that it's been given. That's all for the blog. You can read it yourself using the link in the description. The next 12 plus months as Creative Assembly turns 20 years old are looking extremely bright. CA doesn't look to be slowing down one bit, and I'm very excited to see where this all go, and maybe it'll give some faith back into a community that I've seen experiencing some war weariness the last few years. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to click the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my Patreon, as supporters will be able to vote on what you want to see up on the channel. Let me know your thoughts on the development update blog in the comment section down below. This is HforHavoc, and I'll see you in the next video.